Okay, so why would you want to build a software services company or agency or custom dev shop or whatever you want to call it, services based business, versus building a product company or a software company? Okay, so let's define the two first of all. Okay, so when I talk about a product or software company, that's where you build some piece of software and you release it to the public, and the public pays to use that software. Okay, so this might be something like Shopify or FreshBooks or HubSpot, right? So these are software products that people pay to use, right? So that's a product or software company. Okay. By the way, this also includes software as a service companies. Okay, so those are still, you're building a software and the people out there pay to use it. Okay, the other side of this though, okay, so that is a software product company. The other option to start a software company is to build an agency or a dev shop or a custom software firm or whatever, right? And this is a service type business, and what we mean by service there is human services, right? And what people pay for in that situation is they're kind of paying for your labor, basically, right? So they're paying you to basically work for them and build something for them, right? So rather than paying directly for the product, they're really paying for your services, okay? So those are the two kind of types of software companies that people usually think about when it comes to starting a company, right? Now, I will say that most people that I've talked to or encountered always talk about starting a product company or a software company. But when I started my business, and this is a business that I started back in 2012 and I've been running for 10 years, I started a software firm or a services business, okay? And, there's a lot of, I don't know. I've encountered a lot of either negativity or I've encountered a lot of criticism for starting that type of company. Now, why would you want to do that? And why do people do that? Now, a couple warnings before I talk about the comparison. One, this is based on my own experience and my own opinion. Okay. And two, I've never built a product company. So I can't directly say that I prefer one over the other, but I'll tell you my reasons why I started a services business, or again, like an agency, and why, like my thoughts about why I did that. Okay, so in my opinion, to be honest, neither is bad and neither is good, or neither is better and neither is worse. It just kind of really depends on the type of person you are and the types of risks that you're willing to take and the types of failures you're willing to endure and the types of successes that you want. That's really what it's about. Okay, it's the type of person that you are and the goals that you have. Okay, it's not like one is clearly better for everybody and another one's clearly worse for everybody. Okay, it's really dependent on a lot of those factors. So first, let's talk about the financials. Okay, because a lot of people talk about software product companies as being like way better financially. Okay, and I would agree with that, with the caveat that if they are successful. Okay, so the way that I look at software product companies is usually their revenue is very low in the beginning. Okay, and they're investing a lot of time, effort, and money and resources into building up the product and selling it and marketing it and doing all this stuff. But in those early years, okay, your revenue is very low because usually software product companies are based on selling to the masses, right? And when you sell to the masses, you're typically selling at a way lower cost point, okay? So, if you, I think FreshBooks, you can start off at, I don't know, $30 a month or something like that. But a lot of these kind of products, they're usually relatively cheap, or maybe $100 a month, these kinds of things, right? So you pay $100 a month or whatever. And so if you think about getting a user in the door, your first couple users, maybe 5 users, you might be bringing in $500 a month. And $500 a month is not a ton of money, right? Especially when you're paying all these engineers and marketers and project managers and all these stuff like that to build this product, right? So when you start off, your revenue is actually very low, okay? But then if you do your job right, things start to pick up, and classically with a software product company, it scales because what you're doing is you're releasing software, and software for anybody to use doesn't necessarily require more human labor, right? You can build a product and you can release it, and then you get a bunch of people subscribing. But it might take a long time to get to that inflection point. But then as soon as that inflection point hits, you all of a sudden now start to skyrocket and start to get more and more revenue and crazy. And that's the dream of most software product companies, right? Okay. But here's the thing. It may take a really long time to get there, right? It could take 5 years. It could take 10 years. It could take more. And what's worse than that is it may not ever happen, right? And so this is the tricky thing about software product companies is, yes, if they take off, they are definitely more scalable. You can make a lot more money. You can grow a way bigger company, no question, okay? But are you the type of person who's okay with taking a lot of investment early on from family, friends, and investors? Are you the type of person who is okay if the whole thing fails? Are you okay with spending that money and not knowing, waiting for that inflection point, okay? That is kind of the nature of software product kind of companies. Now, again, I've never done one myself, so I'm not speaking on an authority on that matter, but that's what I've gathered, okay? Now, the other thing is, again, with that model, I know a lot of entrepreneurs, they're okay with that. They're okay with the product failing, and that's why they fail fast, and they kind of create another company and another company and another company. Eventually, by company 5 or 10, there's a huge takeoff, and they're golden, right? So it's about, are you okay with that kind of lifestyle? Are you okay with that kind of pace, right? And are you okay with that kind of uncertainty, right? That's what software product company is. Now, on the other hand, with an agency, you can kind of be profitable from day one, because with an agency, what you're doing is you're charging people for as soon as you start working, right? So if you get a contract with somebody, and you start working for them, you can just charge them right away, charge them per hour, and say, I'm going to charge you $100 an hour, $200 an hour. And you can very quickly get to thousands of dollars a month, Byteside, I think we brought in between $10,000 and $20,000 a month, pretty early on, right? So that's because you're working a lot of hours and you're just charging for the hour, right? So people are paying you for that. Now, but the problem with a software agency, okay, is that yes, you get that initial surge of money right away, but it stays pretty stagnant and grows incredibly slowly, because the only way you can get more money is by getting more clients and getting more staff. And when you talk about more staff and more human resources, that's where things become very not scalable, right? And it's very hard to grow a software firm, right? Or a services business, because you got to find people. That's hard to find. They have to work well. They have to deliver. And there's only so many hours in a day that a person can work, right? So you don't get that huge uprise like you get with a software product company. You just get this kind of steady growth. Oh, we're going to hire another person. We're going to hire another person. And you never get that explosive growth. Okay, and not to mention, like, if you want to up your rates and everything, it's not like if you're doing well, all of a sudden you can charge like 5 times your rate, right? People are going to run away from you. So it's a very slow growth thing, but it's steady, and you kind of get money right away, and you're kind of profitable from day one, especially in a software services business, right? Yes, other services business require a lot more capital to get going, but in a software services business where you're just, writing software for people, as long as you have your laptop, you can be profitable from day one. Right. So that's one of the aspects, right? It's like, are you okay with that kind of curve where you're like making not very much money for a long time and then eventually you skyrocket and maybe never skyrocket? Or do you want to start making money from day one, but have a very slow growth and never have explosive growth, right? And that's the kind of thing that led me to start a services business, because I was more like, I'm very risk adverse, and I don't know the investment game. I don't know how to go after investors, right? And I don't like giving up control, and I don't know the equity game and all that stuff. So I didn't want to deal with any of that. So I started a service business because this was closer to what I was used to doing, which is when I'm working a 9-to-5 job, basically people are paying me per hour to do work for them. That's kind of very similar to a software services business, right? Not software as a service, like a service-based business, right? So that's why I started an agency. And I think this is something that people really need to think about. I think it's very easy to say, of course, product software company scales better and it's a lot better. But there's a lot of work, time, effort, and resources that it takes to hit that inflection point and really get going. Okay, it's not easy, right? Neither side is easy, right? That's the biggest misconception, is that one is way easier than the other. No, like there's a lot of work on both sides, right? But it just depends on what kind of curve you're going after. And by the way, that is purely the financial discussion about software product business versus a kind of service agency model, right? That's just the financial aspect. There are so many other aspects to consider. Like, what type of work do you want to get into? What kind of team do you want to build? Do you like working from project to project, or do you want to kind of build one thing that, takes over the world or whatever, right? There's so many other factors to consider. But recently I feel like not a lot of people consider the agency model because of all this, like, oh, it's easier to scale, it's all this stuff like that. And yeah, no question, I agree with those arguments, but I do also want to point out that it is very, very hard to get a successful idea off the ground to hit that inflection point when it comes to a product or software company, right? There is so much work to do there. There's validation, there's selling, there's marketing, there's growth, there's managing a team to do that, there's investment, there's all this stuff that has to be done, right? So it's not so black and white when you consider that. So hopefully that opens people's eyes a little bit. And if you guys are curious, I am working on helping people start their own software agencies. So if this is something that resonates with you, be sure to reach out to me, because it is something I'm building. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about that because I have heard a lot of arguments for just going software product business 100%. I did not take that road, and the last 10 years of running ByteSight have been great. There's obviously been ups and downs, and there's a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of tough things to deal with there. But it's I find a path that is not obvious to people, even though a lot of people do it. So hopefully this sheds some light on it. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. Leave them down below. All right, see ya.